Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second quarter of 2016 PRISM STD Information System Users Group. We're really excited about today's call. I think we have a real lot of good information. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping things to go through. My name is Charlie Ravens. I'm with National Coalition of STD Directors, and we are hosting this call along with our partners at Centers for Disease Control and the Surveillance and Data Management branch, and my co-facilitator for today is Marvin Fleming. So a couple of housekeeping things. Please mute your phone when you're not speaking. One of the things we're trying to do is we want to have a lot of questions and dialogue and discussion, and so we're not muting the conference line like we have in the past. But in order for that to really work, everybody has to be really diligent about keeping their phones on mute, because we've had situations where people put their phone on hold, and then we start hearing hold music, or they don't realize it, and they're having a conversation, and it gets very disruptive. So, again, we just really need everybody just to stay really on your toes, and we are going to do a roll call. So, during our roll call, or if you have questions, just unmute your phone and mute it back. So, just want to make sure we do that. Okay. If for some reason I lose internet connection, hopefully we're hoping will not shut down, and Marvin should be able to sort of take over. So if for some reason there's some technical difficulty, don't hang up or don't disconnect. Give us a minute or two to reconnect, and we'll get going. If you have questions for us, or you want to ask, you don't want to ask a question, but you have a question per presenter, use that chat function on the left, and you can send a question to us, and we'll be monitoring that as we go along. So that's our minimal housekeeping rules. Just as a reminder, the PRISM, we started the PRISM Users Group really for our grantees to really promote information and technical assistance and peer-to-peer sharing of best practices, solutions to common problems, technical assistance, et cetera, as well as really have an opportunity to have a dialogue between CDC Division of STD Prevention, NCSD, and our colleagues at ASD who we're excited that are on this call, so we can really all work together to make sure that we have the best STD information system as possible for all our project areas. So that's kind of why we're together. And so, one of the things we really try to do on these calls is promote discussion and questions. So I know sometimes people are a little bit uncomfortable about, talking on a conference line, but I think for these calls to really work, people sort of need to step out of their comfort zone and ask questions and or talk about best practices and that kind of stuff. So let me, before we go to the agenda, Marvin, if you want to do a quick roll call.
Yes, thanks, Charlie. Hello, everyone. My name is Marvin Fleming. I am part of the informatics team of the Surveillance and Data Management branch here in the Division of STD Prevention. We're going to do a quick roll call. We'll start with our project areas. We're just going to ask to see which areas are on the call. So we'll start with, is Alaska on the line?
Yes, we are.
Arizona?
Yep, we're here.
Arkansas?
Arkansas is here.
Colorado? Florida?
I'm Mary's here for representing Florida, if needed.
Okay, thank you. Indiana? Louisiana? Maryland?
We're here.
Mississippi? New Hampshire?
New Hampshire's here.
New Mexico?
New Mexico's here.
Thank you. Tennessee?
Tennessee's here.
Wyoming? Okay. Any project areas that are on the line that I've missed calling out? Okay. And who do we have on the line from CDC?
Hi, this is Ninad here. Hi, this is Kristen Kreisel.
Alicia Harvey.
Anyone else on the line from CDC? And who do we have on the line from ASD?
Hey, this is Trey Williams. You also have Mary White, James Crowley, and Katie Tucker.
And that's it for roll call.
Great. Thanks, Marvin, and thanks for everybody joining in. We're really excited. I think we're having really good participation. I'm showing over about 25 people are on the line, and the fact that we have ASD participating. So we're really excited about how these calls are going. So quickly, a review of the agenda. We've already done the welcome and introductions. I'm going to give a really short update from NCSD, followed by an update from the Surveillance and Data Management Branch by Marvin and Alicia Harvey. Then our partners at ASD are going to talk about some new developments. And then we have a great presentation from our folks in Maryland. Marcia Pearl and Sandra Mattis are going to talk about MSM indicators, how to report and collect data. We'll end up, we always try to leave some time at the end of the call for questions, discussion, whatever. And then we'll have just a quick review of next step and action items. So, if we need to, we'll run over a little bit of time. I know some people might have to leave quickly at 2, but if we need to run over, we want to make sure we have always enough time for questions and discussion. So with that, I'll move to the next thing, NCS update. Again, NCSD is continuing to support the users groups. We understand how important surveillance systems are to everybody, and that our role is to sort of help link you up to technical assistance, partner with CDC, and make sure you get the latest information. So if you do have any technical assistance needs, feel free to reach out to us. We're not PRISM experts, but we can maybe link you to somebody that we know might have handled your problem. The other thing is we are working on our annual meeting, which is going to be in lovely Phoenix in December. And so we always do several surveillance sessions and sometimes even a pre-meeting, several-hour, pre-conference session. So if anybody has any topics or they're doing things that they want to present, or something innovative, let us know. Just email me and we'll get you on the agendas, because it is really important to share peer-to-peer what people are doing. So that's pretty much it from NCSD. I'm going to turn it over to Marvin, who's going to coordinate the CDC update.
Okay. I just have a few updates from the Surveillance and Data Management Branch. Just a reminder, the 2016 STD Prevention Conference, scheduled for September 20th through 23rd of this year, abstracts must be submitted electronically no later than Monday, April 25th by 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Abstracts sent by mail, fax, or email will not be accepted. The next Surveillance Coordinators call is scheduled for Monday, May 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The only update that I can give on message mapping guidelines is that they are currently being piloted in several states. For our ELC update, as a reminder, under Attachment C of the Epidemiology and Laboratory Capacity for Infectious Diseases Funding Mechanism, activities are being solicited to improve health information system capacity. Sustaining or enhancing integrated surveillance systems that include STD surveillance data is specifically mentioned. Automated STD ELR reception and processing, especially for gonorrhea and chlamydia laboratory reports, remains a priority. And preparing for electronic case reporting is also mentioned as a potential activity. We encourage you to work with your ELC coordinator to take advantage of this funding opportunity. Those are all the updates that I have from DSCD. However, we're fortunate to have Alicia Harvey on the call, who will also be sharing some information. But as we like to normally do, we like to give polls on this call. So we'll go ahead and we'll do our first poll question. Has your STD program finalized your 2015 STD surveillance data? Yes, no, unaware of closeout date, don't know, or not applicable. Take a moment and give your response, please. Okay, it looks like fairly overwhelming that you have not finalized your 2015 data. Our second poll question, has your SC program sent the CDC a final 2015 year-to-date file? I think we know where this is going to go, but take a moment and complete your answer. Okay, overwhelmingly the majority have not submitted their final 2015 file. With that, I'd like to switch over to Alicia. If you could please, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon. The good news is that the closeout date is not here yet. The final closeout date for the 2015 STD data is next Friday, April the 29th. Therefore, you have a little over a week to get your final STD data to us. And as always, if you're having any problems or anything, please feel free to contact me as soon as possible. Most of you should be receiving the STD quarterly reports and the NETS edit check reports that we send quarterly. We ask that you be sure to review these reports and clean up your data throughout the year instead of kind of waiting until the end of the year. The edit check reports provide detailed information about invalid values and illogical checks. Some states will have lots of records with date issues. We realize that some of these items are actually correct, and if that's the case, you just leave the data as is. You're not penalized for the number of items that are on that report. The cases are still counted, and it's just a way for us to have you to look over the data once again to be sure it is correct when you send it in. If you're not receiving the reports and you'd like to, please email me at aharvey@cdc.gov, and I will add your name to the distribution list. Okay, slide, Marvin. Frequently we receive public inquiries for our STD data, and occasionally we get requests for STDs among children less than 10 years of age. We want to ensure that we are providing the most accurate aggregate data as possible, so therefore we ask that you verify the cases with persons 0 to 9 years of age. This table, which is by state, by disease, with the number of records reported with ages 0 to 9. We ask that you double check this data. It was just run this week by verifying the ages before the final file is submitted to CDC. Okay? In the next slide, Marvin, in the quarterly reports we provide, we include a table that kind of gives the percent of your unknown, missing, or invalid values for specific variables. Today we're just going to focus on PNS syphilis, and the variables that we're going to look at are just county and the sex partner data. The numbers in this table represent the percent of missing, invalid, or unknown values. I do not show the actual number of cases because it will make the slide a little bit busy. However, if you'd like to know the actual number, please feel free to contact me. This variable, which is county, is very important because we consistently provide data by MSAs. And these MSAs are created by combining county-level data. Again, the good news is that most everyone is doing an excellent job of providing valid county codes in your NETS data. Okay? The next slide, sex partner data is another variable that is frequently being analyzed by our EPIs here. This data is required for syphilis and optional for other STDs. So we ask that, as much as possible, we kind of start trying to provide this data because we are starting to analyze this data much more at this level here with our EPIs. Okay? Transition. Question? Okay. As you transition to PRISM from your current system, please contact me. We want to make sure that you will send a test file from PRISM so that we can review the file and make edits before you begin your official weekly reporting to CDC. You should also send a year-to-date file from your old system before you make the switch. In case something goes wrong, we can kind of roll the data back to where you were. If you transition like in the middle of the year, keep in mind of how you will create a year-to-date file at closeout. If all your data is being migrated to PRISM, you should be okay. However, if you're not migrating the data, we need to have a plan in place of how you will combine the data from the two systems at closeout. So just kind of keep me involved and let me know when you're going to make that switch, and we can kind of plan it and you'll be okay. Again, contact me if there are questions, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Alicia.
Okay.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Great. So thanks, Marvin and Alicia, for the CDC update. Anybody have any quick questions for either one of them? Okay, hearing none. And if you do have any questions, feel free to send them in on the chat while we move on. And when we get a transition, we can address your question. So right now, we're really excited that ASD is now partnering with us on these calls and giving an opportunity, to briefly update on what's new, as well as, if we have time, maybe a couple of questions for them. If not, then we can ask them questions they can address later. So I'm going to turn it over to our folks at ASD. I know there's several people that are going to be speaking, and let's hear an update from ASD.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. This is Trey Williams. Good afternoon, everyone. Next slide. We're going to talk to you about some release notes from the newest release. We just had an April 26th release go out. We actually had about 5 slides worth of release notes, so there's lots of great things that went into this release. If you have any questions or concerns about what all the release notes are, please feel free to reach out to one of us. Either James or Mary would probably be your best bet, but we'll talk about just some highlights from that, and then we'll discuss a little bit about PRISM 1.0. So since ASD officially decided to support PRISM, we agreed that we needed to, at some point in time, we needed to sort of bring the source code, the open source code in-house, and start to make a version that we could help support and push forward technologically with the goal of making it more certainly user-friendly, to get better data out of it, to make it more usable and interoperable and extensible. So we'll talk about a little bit, a few of the updates that we have of PRISM 1.0, which is what we're terming it. Then we'll talk a little bit about generating data dictionaries from your versions of PRISM that you have on premise. I think I'll turn it over to Mary after that to speak to end-of-year cleanup processes, and then we'll just give you a quick update on the user manual, the elusive user manual. So next slide. So this is, again, we had a release in April 2016. This is just one of 5 slides that include all of the functionality that's included in this release. A couple of big points that I want to point out. One is allowing QA to be completed by area staff if desired instead of headquarters staff. Another update is dealing with congenital syphilis. Disease 790, it no longer requires a lab test. And the third point that I wanted to point out is the adding of the display of specimen source on the test listing page. Next slide, please. Okay. In PRISM, again, PRISM 1.0 is the official first version that we are creating in-house. I know that we spoke at prior meetings and discussed our need to make it more interoperable, build in things that would allow us to integrate PRISM with other systems more easily, and also allow us to add functionality onto PRISM a little more quickly. I won't get into all of the technical details, but a couple of the highlights. The first thing that we needed to do was to take all the source code from the April 2016 version and integrate that, import that into our source control repository that we have in Bitbucket. That includes everything, including the project code up to date, the SSIS packages, and the reports. And one thing I just want to make sure of that everybody understands that PRISM is in fact open source and does remain open source. So you guys have access to this source code. Just make sure that you give a request either through James or Mary, and we can get you the latest source. We're currently working to reorganize the source control in accordance with industry best practices. That's in progress. We're creating a deployable test database. So when we create new versions of PRISM and we start upgrading it, it would be nice to have and generate test data on the click of a button, and so, or at least within a few steps. And so we're working on that right now. We're working on, we deployed a cloud infrastructure basically that allows us to create a public-facing dev, test, and demo versions of PRISM. We're restructuring that a little bit, making sure that we're tightening down security. Again, there's not going to really be any real live data in there, so no worries about security concerns. We are also developing a new feature roadmap which will explain where we are now and where we want to go, and talk about the different pieces of functionality and feedback. That will be based largely on feedback that we get from the states that we're working with. A couple of new features that we've already developed for PRISM 1.0, the ability to delete maternal records, to delete field records. We've added some additional maintenance screens that you can see up there. We have added an All Notes tab that's filtered based on user permissions. We had the ability to auto-select did not ask or refuse to answer for risk questions. We are also making the site more responsive. So that means that when viewing it on a PC or on an iPad or even an iPhone, or for those of you that use Android phones, or even Windows phones, I'm not going to discriminate, that will, the site will morph into something that looks good on your screen, and controls will move around. So that's what it means when I say responsive. So you hear or you see baseline implementation of Bootstrap. That's really the technology behind that. So that's already been implemented into there. And last but not least, we've modified error messages that display on several screens to show underneath the associated controls. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick screenshot, just to wet your whistles on what PRISM 1.0 currently looks like. It may change prior to releasing that into production. Next slide. This is another example, and again, these will be available in the slide decks. Next slide, please, and a couple more examples. This is another one. Next slide. And next slide. And that's just an example right there of showing the error messages underneath the associated controls there. You can see things are highlighted, so it just makes it a little more clear. Next slide. And, okay, data dictionary generation. So this query now that you see on the screen, every one of you are able to take this query, or at least for those of you that have access to run queries on your databases. You can take this query and run it on your database, and it will generate a data dictionary from your individual PRISM databases that comes directly from the comments that are stored with the columns and the tables that are in your database. If I know that there's been quite a bit of interest surrounding this, so if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to James, and he will get you more information. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Mary, actually, to talk about end-of-year cleanup processes. Mary?
Okay. So basically, we do get those edit reports from CDC. So there's the edit check reports that you get, as Alicia was mentioning earlier. Do work through those, and the end-of-year reports on the report menu will aid you in doing some of those. The main reports there that will help you, especially with the dates, are the morbidity yes and the field record add date not within 60 days of specimen. So there's a couple of reports that all of those with the 60 days of something. If you'll look at those, a lot of those reports will help you find a lot of the errors before CDC sends you the edit check. And again, do run the end-of-year reports. Just because something shows up on a report does not mean it's an error. It just means that you should kind of look over it and make sure there's nothing there. The biggest thing is the third bullet there, which says make sure all the open reports in the end-of-year section, nothing comes back for the year. So right now you should be running all those open reports with the year 2015 and making sure they all come back empty. You need to make sure all records for the prior year have been closed out prior to us doing the finalization of end-of-year cleanup. The next would be to resend the full next year for the prior year, so in this case it's 2015. The resend information is available in the back-end documents if you have that from years past, but there are just a few fields that you need to change. Once you do submit the resend file, you'll modify the active CDC date in the codes table to be the beginning date of the new MMWR, and that will prevent any records from 2015 of being reopened. And so the buttons will go away. You must also modify the system parameter table to stop the dual year sending of data, and there's a parameter in there for net prior year, and you'll just null that parameter out, and it'll quit sending dual year. And then, of course, after everything's said and done, you want to resend your current year, 2016 year to date, to make sure you're starting off fresh and that you don't have any issues. Okay, and that's just a real summary as to what is involved in end-of-year cleanup. Are there any questions? Okay, well, I'll return it back to you, Trey.
All right, thank you, Mary. Okay, so for as long as I've been working with Mary on PRISM, even prior to the team that we put together, I have been asked numerous times about a user manual. And every single time my answer was, we don't have one, and Mary's really, really busy. And so she's busy getting to and supporting all of the other states. So what we ended up doing was ASD went out and we found a subject matter expert, and we worked with her to create a user manual for us. And it is a user manual that will continue to be updated and will closely mimic our PRISM version, starting with 1.0 and maybe even the prior version as well, the April 2016. So that is an initial draft of that is complete, and we are currently waiting on feedback from end users before finalizing that draft. So that's almost ready to go. And that's all that I have. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Trey. And we really appreciate the very thorough presentation from ASD today. We have time probably for one or two questions, and then if we have more time, we can ask them at the end. But does anybody have any burning questions, as they say, for our ASD colleagues? Okay, hearing none, and if you do have any, feel free to send them in the chat function, and we'll make sure that they get asked. And we've had several questions in the chat feature about we are going to be making both this recording of this user group meeting as well as the entire slide set, and there's a few slides from ASD that we actually didn't include for time purposes, but we usually post those up on the NPIN site sometime within the next week after this call. So you'll be able to get a copy of the slides and and the recording. One quick question we had is, when's the PRISM 1.0 release date?
That is a great question. I believe that we're trying to target June. Right now, it all depends on the availability of testers. We've met internally and come up with a strategy to be able to get this out. Our biggest need right now is to be able to test the functionality that we have in PRISM 1.0, and so hopefully we'll be able to get it out close to around that that date.
Great, thanks. So again, if people have other questions, feel free to that you thought of while we're moving on, put them in the chat feature, and as soon as the next presentation's over, we're going to open it up for questions again. So we're really excited about this next presentation from our colleagues in Maryland about MSM indicators. And before we get started and introduce them, a couple of just real quick poll questions. First of all, does your STD PRISM system report or calculate MSM indicators? So it's yes, no, don't know, or not applicable. So just take a minute to respond on that. So it looks like about half of you do have MSM indicators, and we're hoping for those that can report or calculate them. We hope the next presentations kind of give you an idea of some things that you can do with MSM indicators. And our next poll question is, do you need technical assistance for reporting or calculating MSM indicators? So yes, no, or not applicable. So it looks like a few of you do have some technical assistance needs. If you do, I would recommend emailing Marvin or myself, letting us know, and we can hook you up. Or feel free to contact Marcia or Sandra directly in Maryland. But if people do need technical assistance, let us know, or even send us something in the chat, and we will hook you up. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Marcia and Sandra, who are going to okay, and somebody has their phone off of mute and is talking, so if you could stop on that. So you guys ready?
We are. I'm just trying to figure out how to control the slides. Okay, I think I got it now. Oh, wow. So good afternoon. This is Marcia Pearl and
Sandra Matthews.
And we are going to talk about some changes that we're working on related to the MSM indicators in PRISM that were actually really spearheaded by James or Jim Mathias in Florida. He really kind of was pushing us to work on it with him for quite some time.
If you want technical assistance, you can call him. He's not on the phone, so he can't say no.
He's actually out of town, so we are going to go ahead and cover this information with you all, and then hopefully I get some feedback from you guys as well, since hopefully this is something that everyone will be able to use soon. So when we say MSM indicator, really what we're talking about is the calculated field that's provided in the report outcome analysis table that is available through the back end of PRISM. That table is something that we, at least here in Maryland, our variety of epidemiologists and other data analysts have access to. And so it's at the field record level, basically an indication of whether or not that particular patient is reported MSM risk. And so the goal of looking at this indicator and working to improve it or expand it is really to make sure that we're kind of tapping into all the various data sources that we do have access to through PRISM, because there are lots of them.
And also to kind of tease out, different types of behavior. So here we are. So the next slide. So the current MSM indicator in report outcome analysis. So I refer to report outcome analysis as ROA, or a data mart. So the current, there are two that are used. We mostly use the MSM variable. That's one, which is yes, that they reported MSM risk behaviors, or 0, that they didn't. And but there's also MSM gender, and you see here on the slide the different response options for that. So what we were kind of, what Jim, again, he kind of spearheaded this effort, but we agreed with him that it's nice to be able to tease out, gay men versus bisexual men, where women get involved, and men who have sex with women only, and people who we don't have any risk behavior for. So to kind of give a little bit more gradations in the risk behavior data. So this is the current criteria for the MSM indicator. And I believe this was from Mary. I think Mary gave this information to Jim. So it's the current gender is as M for male, and that the gender is the self-report the self-reported current gender is male, and then these different risks. And then it also looks at HARS data and the mode of exposure like MSM. So it excludes females from the indicator right now, and transgender patients if it says sex at birth is M, then they're not excluded right now. They're in the mix. So so with the new indicator, we wanted to include the risks attached to the profile, but also look at the partners, the linked partners, because I don't think that was included in the current MSM indicator. I was just looking at risks and EHAR's mode of exposure, but we wanted to look at the sex of the sex partners because sometimes that will provide different information.
Right. So for example, if your staff don't answer the risk questions, but they do happen to link a partner because the patient named a partner, but for some reason they didn't actually complete the risk questions properly, it would then still pick up on that particular risk just by looking at linked profile.
And so when we were talking with Jim, we were kind of bouncing around different ideas, and so we didn't end up on just one indicator because we thought, there are different situations where you might want to define MSM differently. So we came up with three different options right now, and Marcia's making noise over here, so forgive us. It's Marcia's fault. So the new MSM indicator would exclude transgender patients, and it would also include, and so you can see in the yellow font what it would include, the new things it would include, contacts, P1s or P3s that are male, and again, excluding transgender partners, and continue looking at the HARS data. And so this would be for the MSW. Yeah. So so because we're adding in, instead of just anyone who doesn't say yes to MSM risk behaviors, instead of just classifying them all as no, we wanted to separate men who have sex with women only and versus men who have sex with men and women, and put in a different category people that we don't have any risk behaviors for. So so this is the identifying patients that have sex with women, basically, and so so it's basically identifying patients that had female sex partners or engaged in sex with a female, and then in the purple box. So we would kind of tally up the male risk from the previous slide and the female risk from this slide, and then decide which kind of response option in this variable the patient would be classified under. So the options would be MSM only, MSM NW, so men who have sex with men and women, and then 3 is MSW only, so men who have sex with women only. And then 4 would be we don't have enough information about their risk behaviors to classify them in one of these responses. So the expanded MSM indicator would be the same criteria as what we just discussed, plus the sexual orientation data from the profile. We wanted to make sure that wasn't automatically included because we wanted to focus on people, to have an option to focus on behaviors rather than how people are identifying. And so, but with recognizing that there may be occasions that different analysts would want to include that information. But here in Maryland, generally we wouldn't want to include that on when we're like reporting the number of syphilis cases that we had that are MSM. We would primarily focus on risk behaviors. We wouldn't include the sexual orientation. So I think that's the.
Yeah, so this one's basically the same as the other one, and then you see in yellow the addition of that one variable.
And then a third indicator, or a third kind of iteration of an MSM indicator would be, because you can look at someone's history or a guy's history. We might have had syphilis, 4 times, but he only had sex with a guy 12 years ago, for whatever reason, and but that's not his current risk behaviors. Now he's for the last 8 years he's only been having sex with women, and so that might be slightly different than looking at kind of an ever using criteria like ever in this person's history that we have versus in the more recent past. So we had this idea of looking at recent MSM risk behaviors, and so we're still kind of working out the logic behind this. But it includes, we would include the risks linked to the current episode only. And same for the female risk, and but the same different response options within the variable.
And so, when we went back and forth with Florida as we were developing this to kind of process these different things, there was great debate about the sexual orientation question and whether or not to include that. And Jim in Florida really wanted to, and we were kind of like, that's not really something we would normally do. And so we said, well, why don't we just do 2 variables, and then everybody has the option to do it either way. And then we also, in looking at current risk right now, we are including profiles from any time, like linked profiles from any period of time, but only risks in the last 12 months. And so, HARS information from the last 12 months, but then risk behaviors that were reported and linked to that particular disease episode. And so I think one of the other questions there really is, do we want to be looking at profiles linked from any point in time, because that may not make sense. And so we're still really, I think, playing with definitely the last one around recent risk. But just kind of wanted to throw it out to you all and see how you guys are using the MSM indicator, if you do have it in your data mart or report outcome analysis table through PRISM.
Or even how you would conceptualize, how do we define for our EPI purposes what MSM is? What is it, an ever in a person's life behavior, and we count that, and so once an MSM, always an MSM, or is it more fluid than that?
Yeah, one more comment, and then I think we can probably open it up, Charlie. I think the teasing out the difference between MSM and MSM only versus MSMW is really important, particularly as we're seeing congenital syphilis cases going up. And I also think that this idea of recent MSM behavior is also going to come into play with regards to that, because again, just because somebody may have had MSM risk at some point, they may actually now be having sex with both men and women, or women only, and so we wouldn't want to misclassify or not properly prioritize cases even potentially, just because of a limitation of the way that we're looking at the data. So we've really been trying to kind of broaden our view of how to use the data that we do have.
And then also, again, with the different options, you can easily collapse, because 9 times out of 10, we'll probably just report the, MSM only and MW would be probably combined into one group. But there are definitely situations where you don't, where it's informative to have those separated out. So to have a flexible variable also that you can kind of that your data analyst can work with and collapse or pretty easily if they need to.
So what do you guys think? I feel like nobody's really talking on the call yet, so now it's
they're all on mute. That's why.
I know.
Well, let's finish it up, and then we'll ask for questions and stuff.
This is our last real slide, so, I mean, that's the last slide, so.
So, first of all, thanks a lot to Marcia and Sandra. I think this is a perfect example of sort of the value of a users group, that people can say, hey, I'm doing this. The fact that you guys partnered with Florida, and so maybe this will stimulate other people who maybe haven't had time or even thought of looking at issues around reporting and calculating MSM data. Like, hey, somebody else has done it. I don't need to start at step one. I can talk to Maryland or Florida, learn everything they did, and then go back and implement it and talk to people. So, really a great example of kind of what we're looking for. We do have one chat question, and then we'll open it up for just general questions to either Sandra or Marcia or the ASD team. So this is a question about if a female is reported as pregnant with a positive RPR and a negative confirmatory test, and a maternal record is still generated. Likewise, a baby can be reported with a positive RPR and a negative confirmatory test. In both cases, there is no way to close a simple close as not infected. You still have to complete the questionnaires, and there is no valid way to close. So if the question, whoever asked that question wants to add to the question, maybe refine it, because I'm not sure I read it exactly. I assume it's a question for Sandra and Marcia, but if it's an ASD question, please chime in and let us know.
So this is Marcia, and I'm happy to comment on this. This is actually something that we were just struggling with yesterday here in Maryland as we're working on our final year-end closeout, and also something that James Crowley and I at ASD have talked about not too long ago, just a few months ago. And I think this is something that will be in that PRISM 1.0 version that they're going to be rolling out soon. The ability to delete maternal records when you created it by mistake or determined that you didn't really need it. But also we've talked about the idea of how do we figure out a better way to document biological false positives, which is another related issue that is particularly challenging when it comes to the system auto-generating a maternal record. And, in a situation where you may or may not really need to be completing that full report because the individual is actually not, that woman is not actually infected at the time. So I don't know if that helps answer the question, other than to say I think we all share some frustration related to the way the system is set up around dealing with that. And I think we're interested in working with other states to come up with a better solution. And I know that at least James at ASD has asked about it, because I think everybody puts in a lot of JIRA tickets requesting maternal records be deleted.
Great, thanks. And go ahead.
Oh, this is Mary. I just wanted to mention that there is, the reason why the maternals are being created is due to the...
We're hearing a lot of feedback, Mary.
It's echoing. Sorry. The reason a lot of the maternal records are being created is due to the fact that they put an estimated data delivery on the field record, which automatically generates a maternal record. Again, the goal of the maternal record was to actually document and follow the congenital syphilis form by CDC to make sure you don't have a case. Okay, since you're still having to evaluate that form for every pregnant female, we just wanted it documented in the system, which was the original goal of having the maternal and congenital records, even though it may end up not being a case. It was still the purpose of documenting that, hey, this isn't a case. So I just wanted to mention that was the reason why it was designed the way it was.
Great. Thanks for that clarification. Do other people on the line have questions about this issue or other questions they want to ask our presenters? This is a great chance. We have ASD on the line as well as people that have really done some great stuff to pick their brains. So we hope people take advantage of that. Are there other, I know we kind of went through the ASD presentation pretty quickly. Are there other new features that you want to sort of highlight that we didn't get a chance to talk about before that are going to be coming out in PRISM 1.0?
Hey, this is James Crowley here. I think a big piece of what's going to go out there is we're trying to gather feedback from everyone and just kind of get a giant list or, even if they're just rough, high-level ideas of some of these things. Because the deleting of records is something that some of the other states have implemented, and so we're just trying to bring this version of PRISM up with them. But beyond that, it's pretty much we're waiting on, or we're requesting that the group of users help build that list because, like we said, we're not really driving it. So if you guys have stuff that you want to see developed, just let us know. There's no guarantee that it's going to get out in this version by any means, or even down the road. We'll have to groom these requests as they come in, but we want you guys to drive it. So if you have ideas for stuff, please share them because we're not going to just go out and do stuff that isn't going to be useful to you guys.
So thanks for that. And I think if people have, you've got to mute your phone now. Okay. If people, we really appreciate getting their feedback. So I think people can either contact somebody at ASD directly, but I think what might even be better would be to post it to the PRISM NPIN user site so that people can kind of react to it. So if you post something, hey, we want this feature, and you see 20 people chime in and say, hey, we would like to see that too. I think that would really be a great way for people to really demonstrate, with the features that people need. So we really encourage you as a segue to, really use the NPIN PRISM site as a way to, not only ask questions about, hey, does anybody did this, or maybe say, hey, I just did something that was really innovative, but to communicate with the ASD as far as, and get feedback from your colleagues. So other questions for our speakers?
So this is Sandra from Maryland. So I would just wanted to respond to James's comment that about the new features that at least Maryland, Marcia got a new whiteboard just for this purpose to write them all down. But one of, and we do have a list of things we would love to see in the new or upcoming releases, and one of those is EPT, and we do have some input going on about that, some cross jurisdiction discussion going on about that. It's kind of been dormant for a little bit, but I would love to see that revived and make it into the newest release as soon as possible. Just because that's something that's happening now in Maryland, and we want to be able to evaluate it. And there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, I would also suggest that this user call would be a good venue to discuss potential prioritization or ideas for new features. Just because the NPIN site, that's a way to share information, but it's I find before in person it's always best, but on the phone I think is better than, or for me at least, than on the NPIN site also. So the opportunities to exchange ideas.
Great. So I think maybe for our next call, maybe we can do a brainstorming on, if people send us some stuff, and then we can use the call. We did get another question that came in over our chat. I'm not sure who would address it, but the question is, how can marginal partner information printed out on the top how can marginal partners information print out without the index partner name on the top? Can someone address that question?
This is Mary again. Again, I'm not quite sure where they're looking at, or is this on the Profile SL document, or I guess I'm not quite sure. And the marginal always displays under the OP because they're not an entity of their own, so you can't go to a marginal partner without it belonging to the OP. So I guess I would need more information from the person who posed the question as to what screen are they talking about. But the only really printed reports we have are like Profile SL, OOJ transfer type stuff, that kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure, where they're talking about in the system. But marginals are not independent. They belong to the OP.
This is Marcia in Maryland. If you are on the marginal partner screen and you just highlight the information related to the marginal partner, so you're not printing the whole screen or printing some pre-established report or something like that, if you just highlight the information that you want and right-click and click on print, you're going to only print the selected information. So I would just do that, and then you won't have that header that's going to have the OP's information.
Great solution. Another question that came in. For the PRISM 1.0 release, will generation of a field record for a patient co-infected with more than one disease be possible, rather than having to create two separate field records?
No, not at this time. It's not something that's actually being explored.
Is that something, from the user community that you would be interested in? Is there enough support from a number of project areas that maybe ASD should consider this for future releases? Anybody want to comment on that?
This is Mary again. I do want to say that originally when we did the design from STD-MIS, which did allow multiples, to PRISM, which does not, the goal was to actually separate them. It was the design and the purpose of it. So I guess I would still question as to why. I know that it may be saving time in selecting the ordering provider. So maybe we can do something there where we can copy the ordering provider over. But I do believe the records still need to stay separate because they, one, have to be reported separately. And so maybe if someone could explain why they would want to combine them, maybe we can come up with a solution for the why and not so much just say, hey, we need to combine them.
Okay, thanks for that. Does our questioner want to weigh in on this or leave it at that? And we'll assume
from Alaska.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify. So my question was really for just expediting data entry. If we could populate under one screen co-infection, that would automatically generate two separate, field records for the one episode, indicating co-infection, but not having to do two separate reports for the same patient.
So anybody from ASD want to comment on that or any other project area?
This is Mary. I'm just not quite sure that would be any different than what they do now. To create a field record for a disease, it's literally 3 clicks of a mouse. So you click Create Field Record, you pick the disease, and you pick the referral basis, and that's it, and then hit Save. So I guess we can, poll people and see. I don't know. I do hate to say I am going to have to get off the call. I have a call with the Message Mapping Guide group, so since we're piloting the new Message Mapping Guides, I do have to kind of leave from this meeting. I apologize for having to go.
And thank you, Mary. We're about to wrap up. So I would say, Joshua, if you have any more questions on that, feel free to either contact Mary directly or forward it to Marvin or myself, and we can get it to ASD, as well as post that question in NPIN. So I know it's about 2 o'clock, and I know people have to go. So just a couple of quick things. thanks for a great call today. I think we had great speakers. I think there were a lot of good questions. I will mail out the user group list. We try to keep this current because it's a really good tool for all of you to sort of know who to contact in the state if you have a question. So when we send it out, if you could just quickly review the information for your project area. If there's something missing, fill it in. If somebody's left, take their name out or add new people. And so that way we can have a really good up-to-date list. If you are on our list but haven't joined NPIN and want to make sure you're available to get materials up on the NPIN site, the PRISM users group, make sure you sign in for NPIN, and you can contact Marvin or myself for instructions on joining NPIN. If you have questions or suggested topics for next meetings, and we usually meet quarterly, please email those to Marvin and myself, and because we want these meetings to present the information that's helpful to you and answer the questions you have. So I think
Charlie,
without...
can I interrupt you for a second? This is Sandra from Maryland. I just don't want to lose that comment, and I missed the person's name about the data entries, like saving time for data entry, and I do think that that's something that's worth exploring more, because I do think that if we put brains together, that's something that we might be able to come up with ideas on how to improve or speed up that process, because it's a few clicks of the button, but then you have to add labs and all that kind of stuff. So it can be a little cumbersome for end users. Not that once you get in a groove, it can get faster, but still, I think it's worth, as a group, exploring more. So I wouldn't. If we can explore that in this group again, I think that would be a good idea. And if ASD had any thoughts or comments about, so in June is the goal for PRISM 1.0. What's the expectation after that? Like, how often would we get releases?
Okay, so maybe
that would really depend on. That would just depend on how much is in that development cycle. So, and how fast you guys can take in the new releases.
So again, those are the kinds of questions that, again, we really encourage people to use NPIN, post them, and that way when a question gets asked, that everybody has a chance to see what the question is and sort of weigh in from their perspective. So that's kind of one of the reasons why, we're always looking for a tool where we could have dialogues and questions, because we only have these calls once a quarter, but we can have virtual conversations all the time using sort of the NPIN tool as one mechanism. Obviously, you can pick up the phone or email somebody from the list that we provide, but this way everybody's available. So I know we're a little bit over time. Thanks, Sandra, for that. I think, Josh, if you have any more questions, you can contact Sandra or Marcia directly, or the ASD people, as well as post it on NPIN. So, again, we really appreciate the great attendance we had today. If you have any questions, feel free to, or comment, tell us the calls are doing great, or telling us what we need to do to improve these calls to make them even more useful. Contact myself at NCSD or Marvin at CDC. And everybody have a great afternoon, and thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.